I would do it with a 0.3 lead. All right, monopolies. We'll do monopolies, and then we'll do monopolistic competition, and I will be feeling so good about how well you would do on the AP exam.
Yeah.
All right. What chapter or what on? Colleges?
Yeah.
Oh, they're done. They're done. This is finals week.
Wait, so
They got through 18.
Oh.
Hey, we
Man, only 2 chapters.
Yep. All right. Why do monopolies arise? Why is marginal revenue less than price for a monopoly or for a monopolist? A monopolist, folks, is a person who operates a monopoly. So a monopolist is the individual behind the monopoly. How do monopolies, if they have a monopoly, how do they decide what price to charge and what quantity to produce at? How do monopolies affect our well-being? What can the government do about monopolies? Because we know that monopolies are bad for the consumer. What is price discrimination? All right. You know this. A monopoly is the sole seller in a market, but what you probably do not know or do not think about in that definition is this bottom part. They sell a product without close substitutes. The sole seller in a market selling a product without close substitutes.
So it'd be like all cereal.
So like OPD.
Oh, because cereal has close substitutes.
So, in perfect competition, corn or wheat or soybeans would be a great example of a product for which perfect competition exists. All the other products in the market are just like it. Okay?
You were the sole seller of shirts. And that would be.
No,
There are other shirts.
there are lots of shirts on bodies in here. There's no.
No, I mean the sole.
No.
Monopolized
No.
shirts.
Doesn't exist. There are real monopolies in the world.
Isn't like
No, Cox has CenturyLink. OPPD is a monopoly. They are the sole seller of electricity in this market. There is no close substitute. No. No. Monopolistic competition, the next chapter will be very real to you because it's stuff that you buy and use and wear every day.
So people who create new products, they have the monopoly for that until somebody else comes up with something. So like when cars first came out, they had the monopoly on cars.
Except that lots of engineers developed cars right about the same time. All right. So we're going to study monopoly, and we're going to compare it to what you know about perfect competition to give you that distinction. And then in chapter 16, we'll go to the in-between, which is monopolistic competition, which is what we have the most of. Okay? So we're giving you the 2 extremes, and then we'll finish up with right down the middle. Okay? A monopoly firm has market power, meaning it gets to be the price setter. It gets to be the price setter. Competitive firms in perfect competition, have no market power. Remember, there's so many firms and so many identical products that whether they enter or leave, it doesn't matter. With monopolistic competition, when we have monopolies, they have all the power. You, the consumer, none. Now, does that mean that a monopoly can charge whatever price it wants?
No.
Well, in theory, yes, it can charge whatever price it wants. Will the consumers pay it? No. They must still consider what the demand for their good is. Okay. All right. How do we end up with monopolies? If we know monopolies are bad, how do we get there? Why do they naturally develop? Barriers to entry. Now that I've said that, tell me why OPP doesn't have a competitor.
Costs too much money for us to get into it. Or
Yeah.
we don't have like a license.
If you want, well, regulatory power and stuff, but if you want to be an electric power producer in this market, you have to have a power plant. of some sort. Regulatory barriers exist for that, right? Or you're going to build a coal-powered or a nuclear power plant. Then you also have to have transmission lines. You have to get the power to people's houses. Guess who owns all the transmission lines that are out there? OPPD. Do you think they're going to let somebody else use theirs? No. How many of you have Cox at home? How many of you have CenturyLink at home? Those of you who have CenturyLink, they came after Cox. Do you know that there are 2 cables that run to your house, not just one? Because Cox will not let CenturyLink use their cable. Everywhere that CenturyLink went, they had to put in their own infrastructure.
So with the nuclear power plant that we had, was that any company no video too far away from
The one at Fort Calhoun?
Yeah.
That's OPPD's plan. Thank you.
Okay.
OPPD owns that.
Is that
one that's
No, well, no, both are in Nebraska. Fort Calhoun is north of town, Brownville south.
is that why they're closing? Or are
They're
they
closing it because nuclear power plants have a life.
Okay.
And that one has proven to be too dangerous because of where it's built. The really frightening thing about Fort Calhoun, there was an article in the World Herald a few weeks ago, or maybe last week, about the storage of the spent nuclear fuel rods. They're just in storage on site. That's not an okay thing long term. All right, so 3 main sources of the barriers to entry. Owning the resource. So for OPPD, they own the power that's produced. Okay, they own the ability to produce the power. If you are a farmer who owns a wellhead or who owns the source where a spring pops up, you can dam it off and prevent the water from running downstream. That was a major issue during Western settlement, that farmers would create dams along creeks and deprive everybody who was downstream of the water, and all of their livestock would die. We now have regulations in place to prevent that kind of stuff. But you may own the only resource. The reason diamonds are scarce, folks, is not because diamonds don't occur in plenitude. Diamonds are scarce because De Beers chooses not to let them into the market. They created the idea of the diamond engagement ring. And they artificially inflate the price of diamonds by holding them in reserve, by not letting them out into the market. Genius! Because diamonds don't occur everywhere in the world freely.
Wait, but aren't there like artificial diamonds now that are made in a lab?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, but nobody wants
you can tell the difference.
Yeah,
With a
those are like really perfect.
Yeah.
Nothing.
The government can give a single firm the exclusive right to produce the good. Oftentimes this happens with something that would be so cost prohibitive to produce at first, and we need it. Patents and copyright laws
Is that like
protect those.
Is that like bones and not be done?
No. It's why the government provides patent protection and copyright laws, to make it worth the investment to produce that good and to have it protected for a certain period of time. And then there are natural monopolies. This is the most common kind of monopoly. One single firm is just better at it. They just have lower costs. They figured out some special kind of technology involved in the production. They do it with less manpower. They do it with less inputs. Whatever it is, they're great at it. And they're so much better at it that nobody else can even attempt to compete.
Because there's not much of a shot.
Say that again. Does that monopoly what?
Take a sec, because if they're the only
I mean, does that take effect?
well, if they're the one supplier, say they charge a really high rate, no one want to buy it, wouldn't that encourage others to get into the market?
True. But then they'd be really stupid, and if they were already smart enough to produce enough to meet all of the demand more efficiently than anybody else can, do Do you think they'd be so stupid as to charge too high of a
So
price
they-
to encourage a competition?
So if they charge a lower rate, doesn't that benefit the consumers? Because they're efficient compared to other firms?
Yeah, but there's a point at which it benefits them both very nicely.
So is this a bad thing? Should it be taken?
Depends. Depends. Let's finish the chapter and you decide.
What's an example of a national?
Probably not.
With pharmaceuticals.
No, pharmaceuticals are supported by patent law. Let me think on that.
I was trying to think like McDonald's, but then they have like Burger King and all that.
Let me think on it. All right. So let's look at a monopoly. We got 1,000 homes that need electricity. The average total cost of providing that electricity for just a few homes, very high. The more homes we provide to, the cost comes way down. Okay? We could have two firms competing here. We could have each one serving 500 homes. The problem with that is, if we assume that this is 1,000, so we put 500 right here, we raise that cost unnecessarily by that much. Whereas if we just let the one firm provide to all of them, there's a savings across the board. We can decrease everybody's cost. It's called economy of scale. Because that power plant is going to produce this much power. And this much power can power this many homes. But if we only let them provide power to this many homes, then this much goes to waste. Because you're still paying to produce that much
What
power.
about the diminishing returns though? At what point does that?
That's where you have to find that sweet spot.
So that doesn't show.
We're not considering that right now. All right. Now, if we look at a firm in competition, in a competitive market, because the product being supplied has identical replacements, I can buy from firm A or firm B and I'm going to get the same thing. The demand curve is perfectly horizontal. This is all I'm willing to pay for that. It's all I want to pay for my widget. I'll buy it from you or I'll buy it from you. Okay? A widget is an imaginary thing. Okay? So the market price determines the demand curve. So we can increase our quantity and not decrease the price. So marginal revenue is price when we're in perfect competition. Marginal revenue is the price in perfect competition. So when we look at a monopolist demand curve, they're the only seller. So they face the market demand curve because sellers will either buy it or not. Yes, consumers will either buy it or not. Sorry, thank you. So in order to sell more, they have to lower their price. In order to increase their quantity, they have to lower their price. They have to meet that decreasing demand curve. So marginal revenue can't equal price for a monopolist.
Is that why, like, Walmart is selling so cheaply?
No.
Is that just economy of scale?
Yes and no. Walmart's a complex story. There are entire courses of study in business school about the Walmart business model
Just Walmart.
and how they've managed to work the supply chain from beginning to end. All right, let's do some math. Do you remember how to calculate total revenue? No time like the present to figure it out. Calculate total revenue. Calculate
Divided by Q.
average revenue. Get to it. Get to it. Somebody get up there. Somebody get up there and write a minute.
Or if it's your T divided by your Q.
Get up there and write a minute, Q.
Oh, wait, no, that wait, TR is P times.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Change
Yes,
it.
it is. Q times by
And then change it, right?
Those shorts. Yeah.
Do they jingle?
Yummy.
Don't jingle. Please don't jingle those bells.
What bell?
0, 4, 7, 9, 6,
That's 10. 30.
9,
That's 9-6. Yeah.
9,
400.
All right. Good brave Q. Thank you. Send it Q. All right. LL, get up there and give us AR.
R.
You got this,
AR is TR over Q.
TR divided by Q.
Just giving me AR.
We're just
Wait.
P divided by Q.
Oh, yeah.
Dollar
What is it?
Wait, seven.
Oh.
Wait.
No,
You
it's
see-
the same
Let's do sinking P.
36.
What?
Just
It's
copy
the
that.
same
Right.
as
Wait, are all of them like that?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, then why am I?
Because you're going TR divided by
It's
Q.
okay. Average.
So when you divide it, it goes back to the same thing. So when you multiply Q times P and divide it
Aiden. Marginal revenue, please, sir.
It's a change in TR that's used. So it's really just changing. It's really just changing TR.
Four?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does this turn into a game show?
4, 3,
What?
2, 1.
7.
4,
7.
3,
4.
3.
18.
18 is the change, so it's how you get
change
from
in
0 to
TR.
4,
1851.
4
0
to
to
7,
4.
9 to 10.
Yeah, you said 4 to 2. 4 to 7.
We're gonna go with that.
4 to
44.
3.
Big number 3, Mom.
Then 2, 1, 0, -1.
Welcome back to the
That's how you're moving from.
Aiden, how do you get those numbers? Explain to us.
Change in total revenue divided by quantity. It's the change.
Change in total
Change
revenue.
in change between selling one and two. So you're selling one.
Good job, Aiden.
So from 9 to 10.
That's so marginal revenue is the change between.
You wanna double
We
it?
ever have a quantity where it's like zero, like
So revenue's changed.
So 4 divided by
Those look right? Yes, Austin. It's marginal revenue is the change in total revenue divided by the change in quantity. So you nailed it.
Could you just subtract the numbers?
Well, only if your quantity only changes by 1. If our quantity went 1, 5, 7, 12, 23.
Oh, like if it wasn't perfectly by 1. Okay. So you're doing what? You're doing
Change in total revenue, so 4, divided by the change in quantity, 1. Change in total revenue is 3, divided by the change in quantity is 1.
so it just worked out that it was 1, but if it was more than that, it would be like 3 or
Be doing real math.
Okay.
Yep. All right. Here, price and average revenue are equivalent. So it looks like it's a competitive firm. But marginal revenue ends up being less than price. So we know it's monopolistic. Because marginal revenue and price would be equivalent if it were a competitive firm. Marginal revenue is less than price. All right, so for a coffee company, Common Grounds, we're going to look at their demand curve and the marginal revenue curve based on the numbers that you just calculated. So there's the demand curve. Got it? There's the marginal revenue curve. When the curve looks like that, you know you have a monopoly. The marginal revenue is lower than price, it's monopoly. Q.
If it's competitive, those two numbers are gonna be on top of each other. Going
Yes.
Horizontal, right?
Yes.
They have to be going completely horizontal.
If it's perfectly competitive, yes.
Wait, so when
But
your MR is lower than your demand curve as a firm, you have the monopoly?
Well, the firms don't generate a demand curve. When the marginal revenue is lower than the market demand curve.
But when the two lines are on top of each other, that's a competitive market, but not necessarily perfectly competitive.
No, it's going to be perfectly competitive.
Yeah.
In chapter 16, we'll look at the other alternative, which is monopolistic competition. Because perfect competition, other than in mass commodity kinds of products, perfect competition doesn't really exist. What we have most of the time is monopolistic competition.
So if you're below the marginal revenue, should you get out?
No. Well, what? If you're below the marginal revenue.
So like this
That
one-
is the firm's marginal revenue. That is the marginal revenue. The marginal revenue is what it is. I don't know how you can be
Well, you
below
said-
what it is.
You said that when the demand curve you have is above your marginal revenue, you have a monopoly?
No. When your marginal revenue is below the demand curve, that's when you have a monopoly. This is what a monopoly looks like. How did you turn that completely inside out?
I just wrote it wrong.
Isn't it easier to like know whether it's below price or greater than price than to look at the curves? Try and find out.
Yeah, but you may not be given them. So if you know that the demand curve is price, done. It's the same thing. You may not get the numbers. Probably won't get the numbers. All right. So we have to understand this whole marginal revenue thing as it applies to monopolies.
Oh, yeah.
Coach is here.
Oh, yes.
Do not
Where's my
lift.
delivery?
No, I need
Okay.
help next time.
All right.
If
If we increase quantity, we have two impacts on revenue. Two impacts on revenue if we increase quantity. We get an increase in revenue. If we increase our output, we increase revenue. Duh. Right? Duh.
Yeah.
But when we increase quantity, we lower price and we reduce revenue. Well, yeah. Duh.
So you want.
So which is it?
So you want.
It's
output
both.
You
It's
want
both.
you want output effect to be higher than price.
Increasing the quantity increases revenue, but increasing the quantity decreases price, which increases revenue or decreases revenue.
But if you're the only firm in the market, why are you decreasing the price for it?
Less people will buy it.
Tell me what happens when you increase quantity.
Price goes down with the graph. But then like, if you're the only firm in the market, why can't I just produce more and sell at the same price? Because I'm not changing.
You can produce more, but the demand curve tells you you're not going to sell it at the same price. The demand curve tells you that, right? You can't have it both ways, Davis. All right. So, in order to meet that demand curve and sell a greater quantity, you have to lower your price. Now, if only we could sell the first 5 units for $4 and only sell the 6th unit for $3, that'd be great. Except then what would happen to the first 5 people?
They return it.
They'd be ticked. They'd want a refund. Right? I got ripped off.
No refunds.
So marginal revenue has to be lower than price just because of the way it works. A lot of times we've said because math, because graph.
Wow.
Read the graph. It is. It just is. All right. Marginal revenue can even be negative. Remember when we got to the bottom at the quantity of 6 in our chart and marginal revenue was -1, and at quantity of 5 it was 0? If your price effect is bigger than the output effect, those two effects, if the price effect is bigger than the output effect, your marginal revenue will go negative.
So would you rather have a higher output effect and a price effect?
Probably. But do you get to decide? No, the demand curve decides.
So you can almost argue that.
The steeper the demand curve, the greater the
Price.
math it out.
Wait, so does that then this elasticity come in with that?
Yes, elasticity matters.
So if you have a more elastic product, then the price effect isn't as varied as it
Well, for a more elastic good, the quantity is going to increase faster than the price will decrease. For a less elastic good, the quantity will increase more slowly than the price decreases. Yeah. So it would be nice to be a monopolist in a very elastic market.
Is that impossible?
Probably.
It's realistic.
Probably not. All right. Monopolists want to produce where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. That is a given for any good business. Marginal revenue should equal marginal cost. Just because you're a monopolist doesn't mean you don't also want to be efficient. You don't want to be wasting. So you want to produce where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Guess what graph is coming up? The Chpt curve, right? Chpt curve. Okay. Once a monopolist figures out where marginal revenue equals marginal cost, that's where they should set their price, because that's the highest price consumers are going to pay for that quantity. We're not going to go any higher. They find that by using the demand curve. So where is the highest price they should sell? Where the red lines meet? Well, that's where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Do what? Go up to the demand curve? No. Go up to the demand curve. You are correct. Right there is where they should. Because you want to produce at the quantity where marginal revenue and marginal cost meet. That determines your quantity. But to set your price, you go on up to figure out what the consumer is willing to pay. Do not forget that step. Do not forget that. Go on up to the demand curve step. That's critical. All right. So the profit maximizing quantity is right here. But then you got to do that to figure out your profit maximizing price. So this is actually a beautiful thing. It doesn't matter that our marginal revenue is less than the demand curve, because our price isn't set by the marginal revenue curve, it's set by the demand curve. We use marginal revenue to figure out what quantity we make. Remember that was one of our questions? How much do we make and what do we sell it at? Here's how much we make. Here's where we sell it.
So you could be willing to sell it at a lower price, but is everyone?
Well, why would you? You wouldn't. You'd be stupid. If you want to give money away, give away some of this profit difference here. All right. Oh, there's the Chpt.
Looks like Spurs.
The lowest points.
Oh my goodness. What do we do with the average total cost curve? Why do we even have this thing on here? It's just so confusing looking. Let's just take it away. Life is better without it. Good. Now, we can't ignore it. It exists. What do we do with it? What's the average total cost curve tell us? There's 3 intersections. What am I supposed to do with this? I quit. It's too confusing. Mark?
You wanna have your supply curve be above
You want your supply curve to be above the average total cost curve?
Yeah.
Doesn't it have to intersect it somewhere? Why?
You want to produce, don't you want to?
I want to produce
At the low.
from where marginal cost intersects average total cost on up. That's where I want to produce. I don't want to produce any of this.
So you're.
Okay?
Huh?
We've already figured out our profit maximizing quantity. So we're going to use that imaginary line to figure out where our average total cost is. That is the quantity we're going to produce right there. So where it intersects our average total cost curve is what our average total cost curve is. So then, where's our revenue?
Above the average revenue cost.
Isn't it all of it? And then the profit is the top one. And then the total cost is.
There's profit. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah,
Revenue
it's
is all of it.
The revenue is all of it.
Wait, what is that right there?
That right there, this, or that. That's the equation for profit. Andrew!
So no matter what, when it's monopoly, you always pay for one quantity line, you get a better spot for the average total.
Yes. Because if we come over here, that's not a quantity that the people want. And at that quantity, we'd be selling at a lower price, and we wouldn't be losing. All right. Monopolies don't have a supply curve. Did you see a supply curve there? Nope, because they don't exist. Monopolies don't have them.
Wait, hold on.
If you draw a supply curve in a graph on the AP exam and they've asked you to illustrate a monopolistic market, you lose.
What was it?
Blue curve,
Oh,
average
sorry.
total cost.
Down.
Monopoly doesn't have a supply curve. So competitive firm takes the price as it's given, right? And it has a supply curve that shows the quantity where it's going to meet that price. A monopoly makes the price. They don't take the price. They make the price based upon their optimal quantity, which is determined by the intersection of marginal revenue and marginal cost. So we need all of those curves to figure out what our quantity is. We need the marginal revenue cost and the marginal cost curve to figure out our quantity. Once we have our quantity, we need the demand curve to figure out our price. Yes?
So when we're drawing these graphs out on the final, when it comes to the ATC, average total cost, and it's curving this, are we supposed to have its lowest point at that price? No,
Not for a monopoly, no. It'll probably be to the right of the intersection of marginal revenue and marginal cost.
So we don't have to really worry about the lowest.
No, you just got to put the Chpt in there.
Is the graph you just did, is that not monopoly?
That is a monopoly.
That is.
Yes. All right. So, we're doing our monopoly versus generic drugs. Okay? Viagra still has a monopoly. All right? Versus generic drugs, the ones you see advertised, call this 800 number and get a month's supply.
Nail
They're-
If you experience anorexia, that's the name of it.
No, it's 4.
It's 4 hours.
So this is a market for a typical drug.
It's 4 hours.
Claritin. Let's go with Claritin. It's a market for a typical drug. When we issue a patent, we give a short-term monopoly, shortish term monopoly to that manufacturer. Okay? When the patent expires, the market becomes competitive once generic equivalents appear. Okay? So, QM is the quantity at monopoly. You can tell that because it's determined by the intersection of marginal cost and marginal revenue. QC is the quantity at competition. And it's determined by the intersection of marginal cost and demand. When price equals marginal cost, we get maximum total surplus. We have the uber efficient market. So we know by their very nature that monopolies cannot maximize total efficiency because they don't maximize total surplus, because price doesn't equal marginal revenue and marginal cost. So by their nature, monopolies are inefficient. Are you listening, Jared? Because this is answering your question there. Monopolies are inefficient. The value to buyers to make that extra unit, that marginal unit, exceeds the cost of the resources needed to produce it. So it's not going to get made. The monopoly quantity is too low. We could increase our surplus if we made a greater quantity. We could maximize our total surplus. Monopolies will undersupply the market. Why? Because it keeps the price high. That gap between where the market equilibrium wants to be and where the monopoly's optimal quantity of production is deadweight loss, resulting not from a tax, but resulting from the monopolistic circumstance. Okay? So deadweight loss doesn't have to be caused by tax only, it can be caused by the market conditions as well. So in competitive equilibrium, our total surplus is here in this triangle, right? It's gigantic. Yay, we win, maximum efficiency achieved, game over. When we go to a market, or when we go to a monopoly, our quantity is going to be here, right? And our price is going to be here.
Yeah.
Okay? So where's our total surplus? It's there. Yeah, it's that trapezoid. And our deadweight loss is what we lose because we're not competitive. Got it? That's why we don't like monopolies, Jared.
I get you.
Some of them produce massive quantities of deadweight loss.
Yeah.
Depending upon the regulations placed upon them, a lot of public utilities generate a lot of deadweight loss.
Because they can make more, but they're not getting it.
Because they're keeping that price
Like OPD.
No, OPPD has never been accused of that. All right. Monopolies allow for price discrimination. Monopolies allow suppliers to charge different prices based upon various characteristics. Most commonly, race or gender. You are practicing price discrimination if you sell the very same thing to different people at different prices.
Does this actually have it?
T-Hope practices price discrimination when he blows out sprinkler systems in the wintertime. If you are over 65, he will not charge you more than $40 to blow out your sprinkler system in the wintertime. If you are younger than that and not on a fixed income, the going rate is $55. He price discriminates the other way.
Dang him.
I know. What a cursed slob.
Being nice.
He also refers to all of his clients by their pets' names. I'm going over to blow out Barney's sprinkler.
The dog.
Barney, the basset hound. Oh, okay. Sorry. Kira, your question.
If like, is there? I'm not gonna ask this question, but like, your ability to pay really, like, when people set your price and your ability to pay.
Yeah, that doesn't qualify as this kind of price discrimination. I was being sarcastic, really.
That's not price discrimination.
No. Hannah?
2 questions. Is this legal? Are you allowed
No,
to?
it's not legal.
Yeah, you can't discriminate.
Second question.
Like at Genesis, if like they do like there's like an average rate, but some people pay lower than that and some people pay higher than that.
How is what rate they pay determined?
It might be willing. I don't know. It might be like willingness to pay, like who has more money.
Then that makes sense. As long as it's not done on your black and your white, or your man and your woman.
Which actually is better.
Which makes sense.
Yeah. My homie left.
What?
Left.
Oh,